Georgie and Mandy's first marriage needs to address one tragic family dynamic TBBT overlooked. When The Big Bang Theory wrapped up in 2019, fans left the series with a mixture of satisfaction and lingering questions. While the show's humor, iconic catchphrases, and nerdy charm were undeniable, it often glossed over the deeper emotional complexities of its supporting characters. One of the most glaringly neglected areas was the first marriage of Georgie Cooper and Mandy. With young Sheldon expanding the universe and exploring prequel storylines, there's an opportunity to dive into a narrative TBBT barely touched: the tragic family dynamic that shaped Georgie, Mandy, and even the Cooper household. The marriage that was always under pressure. From the brief glimpses in TBBT and the more detailed portrayals in young Sheldon, it's clear that Georgie and Mandy's first marriage was not just about two young adults figuring out love. It was a collision of familial expectations, unresolved trauma, and the shadow of parental influence. Georgie grew up in a household dominated by Mary Cooper's rigid, protective instincts and George S.R.'s occasional emotional absence. Mandy, meanwhile, has remained a somewhat mysterious figure, often defined in the shows only by her superficial traits: attractive, socially savvy, and capable of charming Georgie. But what TBBT never addressed, and what young Sheldon has the chance to explore, is how both their family backgrounds contributed to the instability of their relationship. Georgie, despite his charming exterior and entrepreneurial spirit, was never entirely free from his mother's overbearing presence. Mary's well-intentioned, hyper-religious guidance meant Georgie often struggled with asserting independence. TBBT used Georgie's occasional immaturity for laughs, framing him as the funny, flawed sibling. But beneath the surface, there was a deep-seated tension between loyalty to family and the desire for personal growth. Mandy's character, conversely, presents an image of effortless self-confidence, but one can reasonably infer that her own familial experiences, or lack of guidance, might have made her susceptible to relational stress. The combination of Georgie's over-influence tendencies and Mandy's potential blind spots created a perfect storm for their first marriage to strain under pressures neither fully understood. TBBT's comedic lens rarely allowed for this kind of depth, but young Sheldon could illuminate it. Mary Cooper's unseen role. A tragic family dynamic often overlooked is Mary Cooper's inadvertent role in undermining Georgie's emotional autonomy. In TBBT, she is painted as a loving, if occasionally judgmental, mother. However, consider the implications. Georgie was raised in a household where deviation from moral or social norms was discouraged. His career ambitions, dating decisions, and even his sense of self-worth were filtered through Mary's expectations. When Georgie married Mandy, this dynamic likely didn't dissipate, it intensified. Mary's approval would have been a silent, yet omnipresent, pressure. Young adults in their early 20s often struggle with balancing parental influence and marital independence. For Georgie, this balance was particularly precarious. The result? Decisions within the marriage, whether mundane or major, may have been subtly guided by fear of parental disapproval rather than mutual understanding. By not addressing this, TBBT inadvertently left a narrative gap. Georgie's marital difficulties are framed primarily as his own immaturity or Mandy's superficiality, rather than the complex, intergenerational pressures that young Sheldon now has the opportunity to explore. The invisible trauma. A critical component TBBT glossed over is the invisible trauma embedded in the Cooper family. George's emotional inconsistencies, combined with Mary's overprotectiveness, likely created an environment where Georgie learned to navigate conflict through avoidance or humor rather than direct confrontation. This emotional toolkit, suitable for surviving childhood, is often inadequate for sustaining a marriage. Mandy, although less is known about her formative experiences, may have brought her own vulnerabilities into the relationship. If she too had experienced neglect, abandonment, or familial dysfunction, then the marriage was essentially two unhealed individuals attempting to merge lives without the tools to do so effectively. TBBT treats marital conflict primarily as comedic fodder, ignoring the more profound psychological undercurrents that young Sheldon can now examine. For instance, what conversations did Georgie and Mandy avoid because of fear of judgment? How did their parents' unspoken rules about love, success, and responsibility shape their marital decisions? These are questions that, when addressed, reveal the first marriage not as a failed plot device, but as a tragic story of young adults navigating inherited trauma. Comedy versus reality, a missed opportunity. One of TBBT's trademarks was using humor to deflect emotional complexity. Georgie's misadventures were often played for laughs, his failed attempts at romantic or financial success providing easy punchlines. Mandy, similarly, was depicted as a character whose depth was secondary to her attractiveness or ability to provoke jealousy in Georgie. While these portrayals entertained millions, they also simplified a potentially rich narrative. Marital struggles are rarely the result of one person's flaws alone. Young Sheldon now has the opportunity to depict Georgie and Mandy as products of complex family dynamics, showing how love, expectations, and unresolved childhood patterns collide in the early years of a marriage. This approach doesn't just deepen character development, it resonates with audiences. Many viewers have experienced the tension between family influence and romantic independence. By exploring Georgie and Mandy's first marriage through this lens, the series can transform a previously comedic subplot into a poignant reflection on real-life relational dynamics. The path forward, healing, and reflection. So how might young Sheldon tackle this overlooked tragic dynamic? One method is through reflective storytelling. For example, scenes could juxtapose Georgie and Mandy's marital arguments with flashbacks to their formative experiences. Viewers could witness the subtle ways Mary's guidance, or George SR's absence, shaped Georgie's conflict resolution skills. Similarly, Mandy's reactions could be contextualized with insights into her own upbringing, revealing the vulnerabilities beneath her confident exterior. Another approach is through dialogue and counseling. Young Sheldon has already shown that the Cooper family is capable of introspective conversations, whether comedic or heartfelt. Introducing a storyline where Georgie and Mandy attempt to navigate marital difficulties, perhaps through couples counseling or honest dialogue with family, would provide an opportunity to explore themes of inherited trauma, parental influence, and personal growth. Additionally, the show could highlight intergenerational lessons. Georgie's struggles with Mandy could mirror Sheldon's own challenges in understanding family and social expectations, creating a thematic echo that enriches the series' overarching narrative. By connecting Georgie's marital experiences to the broader Cooper family arc, the storytelling gains cohesion, emotional weight, and a relatable realism absent in TBBT's comedic framing. Lessons for viewers. Exploring this tragic family dynamic is not just an exercise in storytelling, it offers viewers valuable insight. Many adults carry the invisible imprints of their upbringing into romantic relationships. By portraying Georgie and Mandy's struggles with nuance, young Sheldon can normalize the idea that marital challenges are often rooted in inherited emotional patterns rather than individual failures. Furthermore, this approach encourages empathy for characters traditionally framed as flawed or comic relief. Georgie and Mandy are no longer simply sources of humor. They become fully realized people navigating the difficult terrain of love, family, and self-discovery. This shift deepens audience engagement and broadens the show's emotional,